Boruto and the rest of Team 7 battle against a monstrous and deformed Zetsu, and Sasuke investigates a pair of celestial invaders. The Boruto movie arc is about to officially begin, and I have to say that the last couple of episodes have been a really great supplement to that movie, but it looks like they're going to be doing a lot of expanding on this story, and frankly, I can't wait to see how it all goes down. It is worth mentioning that not only did this week's episode of Boruto have a post-credit scene, which you definitely need to check out because it's going to get you all sort of hyped, but there was also a brand new intro in this episode, which I'm going to have to watch a couple more times to actually grow accustomed to, but I have to say, and I'm just saying this at like my bluntest, I don't think it's as good as the last intro. I just felt like the song in the last intro was a little more high energy and went with the imagery a lot more. Here, there are some teases for some of the things that are going to happen in the next major arc of the series involving the Chunin exams, and even some major villains who are going to be popping up, but for the most part, it was pretty much just run-of-the-mill stuff that you'd see from an intro, with the main characters running around, standing, looking cool, a little bit of hand-to-hand combat, and of course, some teasing for some opponents, including Boruto fighting against a pair of ninja, one of which looks like a younger version of Killer Bee, who's surrounded by all sorts of multicolored bubbles, and some other weird, creepy kid who seems to be covered in a black iron sand. I wonder where he's from. And that's basically all my thoughts about the intro. Like I said, I'm gonna have to watch it a couple more times to really let it sink in. It's not the worst intro I've ever seen, but I was hoping for something a little more just super high energy for how crazy this arc is actually going to get. As for the episode itself, well, it was really simple. It was basically just Team 7 going down into a deep, dark cave and fighting against a creepy White Zetsu monster, which was teased at the end of the last episode. And we get to see that the stakes here are very high, as this Zetsu is incredibly powerful and has the potential to take out all of Team 7 by himself. Konohamaru actually decides that maybe he's the one who actually has to go in by himself, take this thing out, while the rest of his team goes back and tells everybody what's going on in Konoha Village. But of course, Sarada manages to actually change his mind, which I thought was really cool, because at first it almost seemed like she was supporting Boruto and wanting to help out Konohamaru, but she still acknowledges that his plan's not very good. But if they do manage to separate, they could actually end up being attacked by that White Zetsu creature, so the best option is for them to team up against this monster. And this is no normal Zetsu. It's like a composite of multiple Zetsu bodies. It has a giant monstrous form, it's covered in spikes, and it can transform its arms into various weapons, but it also has the ability to use 3 distinctive ninja styles. It can use fire, wind, and lightning. In many ways, it kind of reminds me of the weird monsters which were inside of Kakuzu's body. The weird sort of like thread monsters that could use all the individual elements themselves. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I believe we got to see all 3 of those elements used by Kakuzu as well, so there's a little bit of influence here, but the overall look of this Zetsu monster is just awesome. I really love the design and how disturbing it is, because a lot of the time it almost looks like a weird husk, like a shell of a Zetsu. You barely ever actually see his eyes glowing, and he kind of looks like this weird empty doll, and it's just disturbing, especially in the way that he can sort of unhinge his jaw and that he can sort of absorb attacks. He's really a disturbing opponent, but when all characters do come together, they do actually manage to take this Zetsu out. Although Boruto almost ruined everything for them when he saw an opening that he thought would allow him to take out the Zetsu in one shot. Of course, it was just a ruse and he almost got defeated. If it wasn't for Konohamaru being there with his Rasengan ability, they would have probably been just plain screwed. But it's a big learning moment for Boruto. He knows he has to get stronger, but he has to do it in a much smarter way. It's also worth mentioning that he actually used a little bit of ninja technology in this episode. He actually has these little grenades that he can throw out, which have sort of like a flash bang effect, and they actually use that against the White Zetsu in this episode. But the biggest thing to actually take away from this one, aside from seeing young ninja fight against monsters, is that we get to see that Kaguya was clearly trying to build some sort of superior Zetsu monster to create a better, stronger army to fight against an unknown force. We don't know what that force is going to be quite yet, but a little bit of that is teased at the very end of this episode. But this Zetsu actually lives in this massive Kaguya Otsutsuki shrine, which actually even has one of the massive flower buds, which is one of the roots connected to the tree, which they use to actually cultivate these Zetsu bodies. And they go even deeper in this place, and they find all of these Zetsu bodies hanging from the trees, which, when you realize were originally human, that makes it all the more disturbing, but they actually don't have the ability to become full Zetsu anymore, and they're basically just big piles of white goo. They do discover another one of these giant monsters, but it's already been defeated, and it's engulfed in all of these black flames, which could only mean Sasuke Uchiha. It looks like Sasuke actually arrived here before them and decided to just completely torch the place. It's all a part of his secret mission to discover anything he can find about Kaguya Otsutsuki, and of course to erase everything that she is, and maybe even to learn a little bit more about this invading force. Really, this episode right here is about Boruto learning a little bit more about his limitations, his weaknesses, and what he's going to have to work on as he goes forward and tries to become stronger, as well as working better with his teammates. But the coolest thing about this episode has to be the post-credit scene. Rarely do they do post-credit scenes in Naruto, which I think is bad when they're inconsistent about it, because sometimes I just skip as soon as the episode ends. Sometimes I just immediately am done and I just move on about my day. But here, luckily, I was scrolling through because I did want to watch the new ending. There is a new ending as well, which in many ways I like the imagery in that a lot more than the actual intro, to be perfectly honest. But the post-credit scene is this snowy landscape, an almost other-dimensional place. And Sasuke arrives, teleporting there with his Rinnegan eye, and he goes to investigate. And suddenly we get to see these two mysterious beings, which are floating in the sky, right in front of the moon, which is great symbolism about where they're actually from and what their, sort of affiliation is. And if it's not obvious enough, these are Otsutsukis. And for those who have actually seen the movie, these are two characters who go by the names of Momoshiki and Kinshiki, and they are going to be our main villains for the next arc of the series, and them finally appearing and standing in the sky is great. And what I love about it is this is basically what's going to happen right before the Boruto movie starts. In fact, the Boruto film actually opens with Sasuke meeting these characters, so now we're actually getting to see how that all went down. So, it's pretty awesome stuff. So, what's the rundown on this episode of Boruto Naruto Next Generations? It was an okay episode. I was hoping for a little bit more in terms of the production value against the battle with Zetsu, especially because we had all the characters together, and it would just be really cool to see them go all out with this battle against this monster. Not to mention, it would be an opportunity to see more of Zetsu in action, who I feel is a very unique character, but for the most part, he's just sort of like a giant mindless monster in this episode. He has no dialogue. He's just a raging bull. But it is an excuse to see all of these characters work together, and everybody does have a moment to shine. I especially love the moment when they fight it for the second time, and Konohamaru comes up a plan where they're all going to counter its abilities with the very same chakra style that it's using. So whenever it attacks with wind, Boruto comes in and uses wind style. Whenever it attacks with lightning, you got freaking Mitsuki who comes in and summons a giant lightning snake, which looks all sorts of cool because it literally is like a giant snake made of lightning. You have Sarada who's doing reconnaissance with her Sharingan and basically relaying to the team where it is and when it's going to attack. And then you have Konohamaru, who uses the tried and true Rasengan to take this thing out. I thought it would have been a lot cooler if he hit it in the face as opposed to the shoulder, but that's just me. But he quite literally obliterates this thing. It just explodes into all sorts of white Zetsu dust. It's a pretty triumphant moment for him, and it's also crucial that Boruto sees this. He needs to see a little bit more of the Rasengan. The intro does show that he is going to be utilizing this technique at some point, so let's get excited for that. Really, this was a good lead-in to the next major arc of the series, reminding us of the Otsutsuki, why they are so revered for their power, and why Kaguya was such a scary thing. I also just love that Konohamaru was talking about Kaguya and how she was like the most feared thing in existence in terms of what her power was, and it's still ironic to me that they have to use the power that came from her just to go up against them, and how they continue to just remind these young ninja, You are not ready for this stuff yet. This is on an entirely new, practically godlike level. So you guys need to slow thy roll. And this tuning exam is going to be a perfect opportunity for that. But with the introduction of some brand new villains, I'm very excited to see what that's going to be about. Especially because so far we only have 2 of them, and we know that we're going to have a 3rd one that's already been teased, and we've even seen some promotional material released for this character. So I can't wait to see how he's going to be introduced, as he was not actually in the movie at all. And a trio of villains is always going to be better than 2. It'll be an excuse for more crazy action and hopefully a lot of really cool things. I'm very anxious to see how this is going to live up to the actual movie, the Boruto film, because as far as I'm concerned, it's really, really good, especially in terms of the production value. It has, without a shadow of a doubt, some of the best action from the entire franchise. So hopes are high for what they're going to do with this arc and what they're going to expand upon, because there's a lot they can do to expand this arc, especially with the introduction of all of these new characters. I'm sure we're going to get more fleshed out battles, which should hopefully be very exciting. So, I liked this episode. It wasn't perfect. It didn't have the greatest production value in the world, but this is a weekly anime series. These things happen. For what it was and for what it's building up to, the new intro, the new ending, this is a pretty hype episode of Boruto, which is why I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 5. I would love to hear your thoughts on the episode, however. Make sure to tell me all of them in the comment section below. What did you think about the return of White Zetsu? Do you like the way that they're building up the next major villains of the series? What do you hope to see from the next major arc? Let's start a freaking discussion in the comments section. I'd love to talk to you guys about all of this stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, stay down, baby.